la société et la politique publique ici à l'Université d'Ottawa. The Institute for Science, Society and Policy is a cross-faculty institute at the University of Ottawa, and we explore the interface between science, society, and policy, and sort of the cluster of issues at the core of those three domains. In theory, that means we can pretty much do anything we want, because what isn't at the interface of science, society, and policy these days, in practice, there are three areas of expertise that faculty members and senior level practitioners who belong to our network bring to the table. And they are science for policy, aka evidence-based or evidence-informed decision-making, policies for science, technology, and innovation, and governance of emerging technologies. All three of these areas you can find in the research project that you're going to hear a little bit more about from me in a moment. This panel is part of a much larger research study that's called At Risk, and it focuses on how to strengthen Canada's ability to manage risk. As you know, the title for today's panel is Putting the Results of Risk Deliberation to Good Use. And I think what we're really trying to do with this panel, and I'm very excited about it, and very excited about the people we have here to share with you their expertise and views today, is that we often talk about, well, we need to do a better job of engaging the public in decision making, and yes, that's important, but we don't often ask the question, okay, so now that we've engaged the public, what do we do with all of that information and knowledge and that input that has been brought to bear? So that's part of what this panel is intended to address, is how do we go about doing that? The At-Risk project has a broader mandate than that, though. What we are seeking to do with this project, and we bring together scholars and senior level practitioners and a number of collaborator organizations from both Canada and the United States. We're looking to contribute recommendations to policymakers, to regulators and other decision makers on when and how to incorporate public values into risk management processes. The research that we're undertaking, and we've been at it now for a couple of years, the research is focused on how to better address tensions that arise in public decision making when experts and public stakeholders have different perceptions and preferences for how to deal with hazards and risk issues. We have a special focus in this research on a number of concepts: evidence-based or evidence-informed decision making, governance, risk communication and risk analysis, and the concept of motivated reasoning, which we won't be talking about too much today here, but is really important in thinking about contemporary risk governance and risk management and the way in which people's values inform their perceptions of risk. We have a research team that brings together scholars from a variety of different disciplines, everything from political science to cognitive psychology, to communications, to medicine, to science, both from Canada and abroad. A number of the members of the research team are members of the Institute for Science, Society and Policy and are senior fellows with us. And we also have multiple leading scholars from across the country and beyond. We're focusing this research on three policy fields: energy, public health, and genomics. So when I first started at the Institute as director, one of the things that I was intending to do was try to find where we can build bridges between scholars working in different disciplines on different topic areas. And one of my early conversations with one of our members who works in the public health sector was around risk perception. And we very quickly came to the realization that many of the challenges and issues and dynamics in risk management, in public health, and in energy, which is my area of research interest, were similar. And so could we put together a project that would compare across different sectors and help us to learn the best from each of those sectors and collectively to advance understandings of risk management. So in the energy sector, we have case studies undertaken in the area of hydraulic fracturing, of nuclear waste management. In the public health cluster of cases, we're looking at cases in the area of cancer screening and vaccine hesitancy. And in the area of genomics, we're focusing in on gene-edited foods and newborn screening. You can imagine that when we get this team together, everybody's minds are exploding because there are so many different topic areas that we're exploring. We have partners that are working with us very closely in this work. This work is supported by a partnership development grant from the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council. A number of the partners are here with us today, one of whom in fact is on the panel. Keith Dewar from the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission, so the CNSC is one of our partners. Canadian Nuclear Laboratories is also one of our partners. We have Renee Silk here from CNL. The Canadian Public Health Association is also a partner with us on this work, as is North Carolina State University's Genetic Engineering and Society Center. Jennifer Kuzma, if you want to give a quick hello. And Jennifer was our Fulbright research chair, visiting research chair in Science and Society a couple of years back. So we're very grateful for the support of all of these partners, also of course for the funding from SSHRC and funding from Genome Canada, which provides a very substantial contribution through the SSHRC Partnership Development Grant program as well. Here at the University of Ottawa, the Faculty of Social Sciences has also provided financial support, as has Jennifer's Centre and has Keith's organization, the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission. So this is our annual research team meeting. We have a workshop on an annual basis. Every time we organize one of these workshops, we also organize a public-facing event so people in the broader community can get an opportunity to see the sorts of things that we're working on. So as I mentioned, this panel explores the extent to which the results of stakeholder deliberation are being, or should be, or how they can be incorporated into evidence-informed decision-making. That, I think, is one of the most challenging, perplexing, but important questions when it comes to risk governance in contemporary times. So the panelists have been asked to address 3 questions. They're not necessarily going to address all of the questions, but at least weigh in on one or more of those questions. So those 3 questions are, so assuming that government organizations involved in risk decision-making want to involve the public in their decision-making, and as we've seen from a number of our cases, there are a number of cases where those processes aren't necessarily that open and transparent and deliberative. But assuming government agencies do want to work and move in that direction, what are some of the implications, the operational implications of moving in that direction when it comes to meaningful engagement and when it comes to how risk assessment is done? That's a really important question that I think we'll hear probably the most from Scott on that one. The second question we asked the panelists to think through and provide some thoughts on is, what are the implications of taking these efforts to engage the public? What are the implications of doing so to decisions about how risks are or should be managed and communicated? So it's not only about sort of the mitigation and the management of risk, but also the communications piece as well. And hopefully we'll hear a little bit from Keith on that. And then the third question that we asked our speakers to think through is, what are the tensions that arise as a consequence of meaningful engagement of multiple knowledge communities? When you're engaging the public, you have to be prepared for the fact that a variety and diversity of knowledge and of information is going to come forward. What does that, what are some of the tensions that raises for organizations, and how do they navigate those tensions? So we have a tremendous group of speakers here for you today, as well as a discussant who will provide us with some comments on their views. I'm going to introduce them. You've got on your each of you on your seats, you've got a copy of their bios, so I won't go through in detail of the biographies. I'll let you read those for yourselves. But I will just briefly introduce each of the panelists in the order in which they will be speaking. So our first speaker will be Scott Finley. Scott, if you want to give a hello, if folks can't see your name tag there. Scott is Associate Professor at the Department of Biology at the University of Ottawa. He's also a member of the at-risk research team and a core member at the ISSP. Scott has also been working very closely and at the Chief Science Advisor's Office here at the federal level in Ottawa, and so hopefully his remarks will be informed by that to some to some extent. Scott was also one of the original co-founders of Evidence for Democracy. So as somebody whose judgment on these issues I have tremendous respect for and has been working not only intellectually but in a practical way on these topics for many years. Our second speaker will be Keith Dewar from the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission. Keith is Director of Regulatory Research and Program Evaluation, and I'm not sure, Keith, what you did at the CNSC to merit the punishment of having to come to these annual meetings, but we're very grateful that you do. And Keith, I think, brings to our research discussions kind of the real world of, from the perspective of the Nuclear Safety Commission, the real worlds of risk management, risk communication. How do you open up risk decision-making processes to public involvement? And then when you do, what do you do with all the information that you get as a result of that? Keith, as noted, is also a member of the research team. Our third panelist for today is Meredith Brown, who is former executive director of Ottawa Riverkeeper. What we wanted to do for this panel, actually, so Meredith, this is probably the first she's really hearing about this project, but we really wanted to invite somebody from an NGO civil society perspective who perhaps is engaging in these more open deliberative processes, but from the quote-unquote outside as a civil society organization, and what have her experience has been like, what has Ottawa Riverkeeper's experiences been like, and what are some of the challenges and opportunities that she's seen. As a discussant, we have with us Professor Mark Salter at the end from the School of Political Studies. Mark is also a core member of the ISSP. Mark heads up a new research and engagement cluster at the Institute on Risk, Technology and Security. So this is actually Mark's first time engaging with the at-risk research team. I hope, Mark, you will decide that you made a good decision to take on the cluster lead role. We're delighted to have you with us and really looking forward to your comments. Mark works largely in the area of aviation security, which for me is just sort of mind-blowing given the fact that privacy and security and perhaps less imperatives for openness and transparency, or at least different kinds of imperatives for openness and transparency. So I'm really, really looking forward to your thoughts, Mark, because I suspect you'll be able to bring something to the table that will really get us thinking. So without further ado, each of the panelists is going to give some brief opening remarks. I think we said something in the order of 6 to 10 minutes. I'll try to keep us on time. That includes Mark as well, who will give us some of his comments as discussant. Mark is doing this on the fly, so yeah, we're looking forward to how you handle that. And then we'll move into directly into a Q&A with the audience, because we know that we've always got great folks in the audience who have lots to say and contribute. So without further ado, Scott, the floor is yours. I'm going to send you down a microphone.
Oh.